That's what it was all about.
That's right.
He was waxing on and waxing off. He didn't realize that that's what was making him good at martial art, you know?
Well, that was because Daniel-san was doing the wax on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He was teaching him about discipline. And then all of a sudden, he could block punches.
Yeah, all right.
So this study found, it's a meta-analysis, and they looked at over 300 studies. They found that regardless of the experiment, design, anxiety measure, anxiety type, gender, country, sport, or intervention type or method, any type of intervention at all, there was a robust improvement. The word that they used was great. Robust improvement.
I guess like mobility stuff is one of those things where if you don't push yourself a little bit into where it's uncomfortable, you're not going to get those positive changes. Or maybe you will, but it might take a lot longer.
Yeah.
So it's like everything. There's a payoff. Welcome back, everybody, to the Big Flex podcast.
Welcome back again, guys. We got a fun one today.
Ooh, we got question and answers, and you know we enjoy the question answer podcast.
One of our favorites.
Yeah, one of our favorites indeed. We've got questions from 8 people. A couple of them are doubles. It's like 10 so questions all up. Couple we had to look up, couple we didn't. So shall we get started? Actually, first, before we get started, if you haven't done so already, like and subscribe. We are up to like almost 1,100 subscribers.
It's happening.
So we jumped over that 1,000 mark pretty quick. We've set the date for the 1,100 kilo squats to be at the end of January. And the very next day, we're going to try to do our 10,000 calorie each eating day.
Yes.
To refeed from the 1,000 squats, which will be interesting. And then, so that's it. We've got some work to put in. But it's bumped up, almost 90 subscribers since just last week when we got over the 1,000, which is fantastic.
I think we should start this podcast off with a question.
Ooh.
An important question.
Well, it is a question and answer podcast. So
I have a question.
Okay.
Who is currently a world champion holder?
A world champion holder?
World record holder.
The
Who
current
is a world champion and a record holder who trains at this gym?
The current M8 under 82.5 kilo GPC
Hold this microphone.
bench press world record holder.
What's his name?
Dusan Mills, my dad.
You gotta go. It doesn't matter.
Oh,
what his name-
sorry.
It doesn't matter.
Hang on, one sec. So, repeat. Under 82.5 kilo world record holder and world champion.
What's his name?
It doesn't matter what your name is. Right?
It kind of does matter.
It does. His name is Dusan Mills. You might know him as Slim Mills. My dad, he is the current reigning M8 under 82.5 kilo bench press GPC world powerlifting champion. And he then also he actually broke and set the world record 3 times. It was a tough heat. There was 3 out of 4 guys that were breaking it or were pushing to break it. And he ended up getting the win and the world record at 107.5 kilos.
What a freaking roller coaster.
75 years old as well.
From
crushing it.
Our end, all right? I'm sure you guys went through hell, but from our end, we were all back home and you were doing like posts updating us on the happenings.
Megan and Fiona, they were screenshotting the live feed and putting it into the group so people could follow along.
And just with that, explain it in a second with what happened and how exactly it happened. But he got the record, and then he broke the record, and then he matched the record, and then he didn't have it, and then he was the champ, but not the world record holder, and then and it just changed and changed.
Yes.
And then he wasn't, and now he irrefutably is.
Yes, he is on both.
What happened?
So what happened was, all right, so basically he won, there was 4 guys in his division, and the current record was 102.5 kilos. Okay? 3 of the guys were competitive. So one guy we won't talk about too much, was a fair bit behind, but the 3 guys opened at 95, 95, and 100 kilos were the first openers for those 3.
And the world record was 102.5.
102.5.
Okay.
All 3 got their openers.
Yep.
Okay, so Dad's in the middle. The first guy went in at 95, then Dad went in at 95, then the third guy went in at 100.
Yep.
Okay? Then second attempts come around. So at this point, Dad is in equal second on score, but the way powerlifting works is if you have 2 guys that finish at the same weight, the lighter person wins.
Yep.
Okay, so technically, out of 4 guys, he's in 3rd place after attempt 1.
So is what you're saying that strength is relative?
Well, it's on, no. Strength is absolute.
Is that what you're saying?
Strength is absolute, and as a fallback, it becomes relative. So after the first lift, he's actually in 3rd place.
Yeah.
Second lift, him and the 2 guys that are close to him all go for 103 to break the world record.
Yep.
The first guy...
Which if For people who don't know, when you go to break a record normally in comp, you have to break it by at least 2.5 kilos, unless it's a national or world record.
So when you go into you have to be doing it as a denomination of 2.5 kilograms.
Yeah.
A multiple, of 2.5 kilograms.
Yeah, sorry, not breaking a record. If you're trying to go up in front of someone, you have to beat them by 2.5 kilos, unless it's for a national or world record, in which you only have to go up by half a kilo.
Correct.
So they all broke the record at 103.
So
right?
they all nominated. We're all going to attempt 103.
Yeah.
And beforehand, you go to the the referees table, and they actually look at your equipment, they stamp it. So like, this is approved equipment, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. All three guys go for it. The first guy misses it. Mm-hmm. Okay. He gets it, but he gets red lighted because it was not the correct form. Dad got his. Mm-hmm. So technically, Dad's the first person to break the record 103 kilos.
Yep.
Fantastic. Then the guy after him also gets it, 103 kilos. So at this point, we're not sure if he's got the record or not, because he did get it first, but the other guy is lighter. So I think what's happened technically here is that Dad broke the record first. He's got the record, but the other guy is still leading the division because he's less body weight.
Okay, so in terms of the championship, him winning the division, he was behind.
He was in second place at this point.
Okay.
Third lift comes along, and I'm going to do this all over again on the Strength Industry podcast when we do the recap, but just freaking, I don't care, go listen. And third attempts come along. 3 attempts only in powerlifting competition. So the third attempt comes along, and all 3 of them go for 105.
Yeah.
Okay. The first guy misses it, just doesn't get it.
Yep.
Dad gets it, so technically has now broken the world record twice and set this new record. The third guy that was in the lead, he misses too, red lights, which means after 3 lifts, Dad has won the division because he has the highest. He's the only one to get 105.
Well, he won the division and he's the new world record holder.
Yes, but it was up in the air on there was seemed to be some confusion between the referee staff and the announcement table, because even after the second guy got the 105, so in the first one, when 2 people got the 103, Dad did it first, but after the second guy did it, they checked his equipment and lifted his arm up, good world record. So we were confused. We're like, oh, does that mean he got the world record because he was lighter? So there was confusion. Okay, right from this point. Yeah. Anyhow, Dad's got the championship tied up. That's all good. But the record, we're not sure. So at the moment, after 3 lifts, he is the only one to get 105. So he is still currently the world record holder at this point in time. Only person to get the 105. In powerlifting and GPC, if you are attempting a world record, so if you have had at least 1 successful lift out of your 3, and you're within 20 kilos of the world record, so it's like if you're like 100 kilos behind, you can't go for it, you can nominate for a 4th attempt.
And try to break a world record.
To break the world record. Okay. It does not add to your total. So
it doesn't count for the division competition?
It will not affect the division competition that has already been finished.
Yep.
It gets judged as its own separate thing, and it's only for the world record.
Okay. Yeah.
Dad's like, well, let's take it to him. We'll go 107.5 because he's got to then get up there as well.
Perform, right?
Yeah. So we put 107.5 in. The other guy also puts 107.5 in, and that added to the confusion because we're like, well, he must think that if he matches, he wins on body weight. Because he's lighter, 200 grams lighter. Yeah. And there are some rules in the GPC rulebook that talk about body weight and records and stuff, but we'll get to that in a second. Basically, Dad gets out there, gets the 107.5. So for the 3rd time in this meet, has now broken the world record. Yep. This other guy gets out there, also gets the 107.5. And again, after they checked his equipment, and they checked Dad's equipment as well, lift his ham up, world record. They did the same thing for this other guy. So we're like, shit, like maybe he doesn't get the world record.
So at this point, you were thinking that he is the division winner and the official champion, but he's not the world record holder.
Correct.
You're thinking that the 107.5 record goes to this other guy.
Even though Dad got it first because he was lighter, and as he went second, he should have gone heavier, but didn't. So we're confused. Anyway, we talked to the refereeing staff, and the refs came over to us and like, look, there's been some confusion. The announcement table sort of gave the other guy the record, but your dad said it first. So we're just going to make sure everything's by the book. Sent off the information to the GPC world record keeper. So there's a record keeper in GPC, and said, "Look, this is the deal." They both went forward. The other guy was lighter. Dusan did it first. The other guy went afterwards. Yeah. Calling is first person to get the record gets the record. Once you set a record, it has to be broken. You can't match it.
Exactly.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're lighter or not.
Correct.
They're in the same weight division, right?
Correct.
So he officially they changed it to he won.
So they didn't change it. They just confirmed that Dad is the record holder and the champion.
So for him to have broken that record, he would have had to have gone to 108.
108, correct.
Okay, cool. So,
But the problem is you can't change your attempt
Once
on a
you've
fourth.
locked it
Once
in.
you've locked in a fourth attempt,
You've
you
locked
can't
it in.
change.
Yep.
So he should have seen the 107.5 and
gone to
forced to go on to 108.
Yep.
Which he didn't as well. So there was a bit of confusion. But in the end, it's all been confirmed to us in writing. We've got Dad's world record certificate. So we got his world champion certificate
Roller
and medal.
coaster.
And then we've got an email confirmation from the record keeper saying
Awesome.
he has the world record as well. So what an exciting event that was.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Hoo-wee. All
So
right.
when are you going to break a world record for something?
Well, look, I've got now just a stable of athletes that are breaking world records for me, sir. Why don't you start training some people that are breaking world records, all right? Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I just like the spectacle, you know? I
Yeah,
like to
okay.
observe.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into these questions.
Perfect.
Questions and answer time.
First question is from Megan. And Megan, bit of backstory, incredibly strong, two-time Australia's strongest woman for different federations, going across to World's Strongest Woman competition come this November. We're heading over in about 10 days. And she has ear problems. So she has like not a cochlear implant, but the one that sits on the actual bone underneath the skin for hearing. And so her ears get a little funny when she lifts, and she can really feel the pressure in her head. I'm assuming maybe more than what normal people would feel pressure in their head when they lift. And her question was, what are the physiological effects of lifting really heavy on your eyes and ears, etc.?
Okay.
Right? And the answer is, I don't know. I looked at Google Scholar and PubMed and a bunch of things, and I couldn't find any specific articles that looked at the intra pressures inside the head when you're lifting. There is stuff saying that your blood pressure, your diastolic pressure and systolic pressure increase dramatically when you lift heavy, but there was no I couldn't find any papers talking about side effects of that.
I imagine it would just be incredibly hard to test that. How would you
I think that's the
measure
problem.
and test the pressure in your...
I think that's the problem. They can take blood pressure when people are lifting, so they know that the blood pressure does skyrocket.
Yep.
But that skyrockets whether you do or don't have a condition in your head. So ears, nose, and throat.
Yep.
So I've never. Again, this now goes back to being a bit more sort of like people talking. You know, it goes less
anecdotal.
It becomes more anecdotal and less clinical in saying that I've never heard of anyone bursting an eardrum, let's say, for example, while lifting heavy.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of blood noses. Generally, that you'll see more with the enhanced lifters. They already have very high blood pressure. And then when you are juicing and you're lifting crazy heavy weights, you'll see quite a lot of blood noses in sort of that.
Well, I guess if you do
realm.
a bit of a thought experiment, the reason why your blood pressure's increasing and the reason why that happens is there's just a tremendous strain on your body. So there's no reason why you wouldn't also, if you're like holding your breath and bracing and breathing, there's no reason why you wouldn't have just natural pressure build up in like your ears, nose, throat and stuff as well.
Yep.
So I imagine there would be a little bit, but
there definitely is.
As to the effects, it's kind of hard to say.
There's definitely increased pressure. Is it detrimental to you? Who knows? When we do bench shirt, you will get little blood vessels broken around your eyes, right? You'll get a little bit of bloodshot eyes, or on your cheeks, you can see the little bit of blood vessel burst. So we know that, when you lift really heavy, yes, you can have some blood vessels burst. You can sort of pop a blood nose. And certain people are more prone to blood nose as well. If you just have capillaries that are close to the surface of the skin and you have high blood pressure, you're more likely to get a blood nose. Yeah. So I guess the answer is, if you are really worried about it, talk to your ENT, ears, nose, throat specialist, and they can maybe give you some more insight. But as far as we can tell, there's not really any studies out there saying, if you're lifting and you have this issue, you're going to blow an eardrum or your eyes are going to pop out. I've not heard anything like that.
If it was a big deal and if it was more prevalent, you'd probably know about it. It would be very well known. Like it's well known that people get lifting ridiculous amounts of weight, get things like blood noses, and you see it enough for it to be known about. If that was a thing and it happened a lot more often, you'd hear about it a lot more often.
There's definitely lots of cases of like hernia and all sorts of stuff like that, but I've not heard of anything to do with the ears, nose, throat. So sorry, can't be a bit more specific there, Megan, but I think, if you are worried about it, talk to an ENT. Talk to one ENT that actually lifts weights, not just because they're a doctor doesn't mean they know everything. Talk to someone that is athletic at least and understands the forces that you're dealing with.
Right.
Yeah. Next question, you can answer this one.
This is an interesting one actually. Scott asked, what are the health benefits of cardio? Like, why actually do cardio? And the answer is don't. It's silly. No, the answer is not. This is actually a really interesting one. There's a plethora of information about how and why.
Prerequisite?
Yes, why cardiovascular exercise is good for you. It is incredibly well documented and for a very long time. And this next bit that I got here, it's not from the most relevant paper. It's from a paper in 2012. But I cited this because of how long it's been known that cardiovascular exercise is good for you. It's actually from Plato, which was around 400 BC, referred to medicine as the sister art. Physical exercise as a sister art of medicine, while an ancient Greek physician noted he actually wrote several essays on the aerobic fitness and strengthening muscles relating to cardiovascular exercise. So it's been very well documented for a very long time.
That's right.
Cardio is good for you.
Do you have any sort of like of the physiological reasons why in there?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So the main reason why is because a sedentary lifestyle is bad for you, and it is a huge risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease, which you usually get from a sedentary lifestyle because you don't do any cardio or cardiovascular exercise, leading cause of death in. Oh, sorry.
Some beard here?
No, it's like a fly in my mouth.
There's no flies in here. There's beard here.
It was beard here. It was. I got a lot of beard going on.
Yeah.
Leading factor of death in developing and developed countries. It's consistent worldwide. There's no biases for gender, geographic, socioeconomic. There's no boundaries like that. It just affects everyone all over the world equally. Regular cardio improves your lifespan, and it also improves the quality of that lifespan as well.
Yeah.
So it reduces a lot of risks. If I wrote cardiovascular disease and then I could just dot point list just so many things that are bad for you because of that. There's too much to go into. Just search risk factors of CVD and you'll find it yourself.
Yeah.
There's lots of them. So it reduces the risk of a whole bunch of things, and that's the big one. The reason why you should do it is because it adds years to your life, keeping your cardiorespiratory system healthy. It also adds to the quality of that lifespan as well. So it's not just living to be very old and decrepit and lying in a bed for 30 years.
Yes.
It's being able to be a lot healthier for a lot longer.
Yeah. Also, all things aside, so if you don't take into account nutrition and everything like that, if you were to be sedentary versus active, it's a huge indicator on whether people are going to become obese or not.
Yeah.
Right. So increasing activity by doing things like doing cardio is going to greatly reduce the chances that you're going to be an obese person.
Yeah.
And with obesity, we know comes the whole metabolic smorgasbord of things that can go wrong. So heart disease, diabetes, all these things that will kill you are far more prevalent in obese demographics.
And there were a lot of different studies that looked at differences in not just cardiovascular exercise, but cardiovascular health. So those are two very different things. So being fit and being healthy, very different. So people who were just less sedentary, so who had physical hobbies, who like rode to work, who did things in their daily life to increase their general physical activity, not necessarily exercise, general physical activity, were much healthier than people who were sedentary. And then people who did that and who also exercised were incredibly healthy versus people who lived a sedentary lifestyle and only did cardiovascular exercise, but like didn't walk to work or didn't do anything physical. Like it doesn't matter what you do, any version or any increase at all in cardiovascular health greatly improves your quality of life and lifespan.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there you go, Scott. Stay active, my man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Live longer, live stronger.
That's right. Question 3 comes from Gavin. It's a multi-part one. He said, how long until you start to how long without lifting weights, basically, will it be before you start to experience muscular atrophy?
Now
there was another
you rephrased the question here, all right? And
No,
I'm very upset about
there was a third question which I removed, which was, how come, even though I barely train, I'm still stronger than Nevin? He says that was you that wrote that up there, not him.
I paraphrased because
paraphrased?
what he said, what we weren't able to say in the podcast.
Okay, so here's the deal. You got me on bench, Gav. I got you on squats and deadlift and total. So you just pipe down, young man. All right? Yeah. Okay, he's got me on everything upper body.
I just thought it was important that we answered that question.
Okay, just because he's big strong boy. All right, shut your mouth.
That was for you, Gav.
But he asked how long until you'll experience muscular atrophy if you're not training.
Yeah.
So look this one up, and of course it's like everything, a sliding scale. It's not going to be if 10 people all who weight train stop training, they're not going to experience the same amount of muscular atrophy. On average, you're looking at at the 2-week mark is when you're going to start. So if you're lifting weights all the time and then you stop lifting weights, around the 2-week mark, you can start to experience muscular atrophy, right? Now, this is...
That's when you start to experience, not when you're considered untrained, because there's a marker for
So,
being considered
when you
untrained as
deload,
well, right?
when you deload, like if you're an athlete and you're training and you're really hard and it's getting more intense and then you're getting ready for, let's say, the Olympics or a competition or whatever it is, and then you taper down your training, that whole taper period of deloading, they don't recommend it goes more than 2 weeks because then you start to go into detraining. Like you detrain, your muscles start to atrophy, you lose strength, right? So that is already known in performance science, I guess, that you don't want to be deloading for more than 2 weeks. All right. So anything past 2 weeks, you'll start to experience some level of muscular atrophy. Okay, where your muscles and muscular atrophy, guys, is the opposite of hypertrophy, which is bodybuilding getting bigger. Is your muscles decreasing in size?
And that isn't all of a sudden at the 2-week mark you're going to lose 10 kilos and 30 kilos on your squat, bench, and deadlift. It's a sliding scale. It starts to kick in after that point.
And again, it's different for everyone. So if one person works a desk job and the other person is a scaffolder, right? And they both train really hard, let's say 4 or 5 times a week, and then they both stop. Well, your desk job person is going to get muscular atrophy quicker than the person that is living an active job and an active lifestyle.
And probably experience it a lot more as well.
Correct. Also, that keeps going even further. Let's say you have an injury, you break your arm, your upper arm, and you're in a full arm cast and you can't do anything. That person is going to experience muscular atrophy a lot faster than someone that is just sitting at home hanging out for 2 weeks. Because they're still moving around and doing things, right? So it really becomes sort of activity and lifestyle dependent on how much muscular atrophy you'll have.
And you can push it even further to that too. Like, let's say you're in a car accident, you hit your head, and then you're in a coma for 3 weeks. In that 3 weeks, not moving your body at all, you'd see a huge amount of muscular atrophy in comparison to someone who's just not training but still like going to work as an accountant. You know what I mean? So
100%.
like, it really depends on the level of activity.
There's also different types of muscular atrophy. They can be induced by disuse. So that's what we're talking about there. So like you're just not working out, you have a broken arm, you're in a coma, whatever it is. Then there's also neurogenic muscular atrophy, which let's say ALS, like neurological disorders. You could have, let's say,
like
nerve damage down your spine. There's a lot of research on spinal nerve damage and muscular atrophy. So again, some things you can reverse. So if you're just not working out and you start working out again, you will reverse your muscular atrophy.
No way.
Yeah, no, it's wild, right? so there's that. But some of these neurogenic or neurological disorders, like you can't recover from. Sometimes working out will help delay the onset of muscular atrophy, but some things, you're fighting an uphill battle against, unfortunately. For you, Gav, you're just working too much, mate. So, you just got to prioritize your time a bit better and come to the gym a bit more. He also asked, can you maintain strength without training? So there's a couple of different components here. You can maintain a certain amount of strength and a certain amount of muscular size with reduced training. If, like we said before, if you stop altogether and there's a disuse, you will experience muscular atrophy and your strength will decrease, right? But once you have attained a certain amount of strength and muscle mass, it takes less stimulus to maintain it. So if you're training, let's say 4 or 5 times a week really hard to get to a certain level, you very well might be able to maintain that level of strength and size. Maybe not like top end strength, but like for sets of 6 and stuff. Off maybe 2 or 3 sessions a week.
Even not training at all. I feel like over the years, I found that, and this is the longer that I've trained, the more I've noticed this. I don't train for, like, the longest I've gone without training was after an injury, like 4 months, something like that. I pretty much kind of hit the ground running. It didn't really take me that long to get back to similar numbers.
All the science says this as well, is that it depends on where you're starting from.
So I imagine if you've been training for quite a long time and then all of a sudden you have 6 months off, it's not going to take you a whole lot of time to get back in, because I imagine that changes your bone density, your hormone profile. Like your body you've literally built it differently. So that's not going to change. If you've been training for 10 years and you stop for 6 months, it's going to take a lot longer than 6 months to like completely change the structure of your body again.
Correct. And you can actually get it back a lot faster. So a great example of this is between 2011, when I used to do strongman, and yoke was my favorite thing. I didn't run a yoke. I probably ran 5 yokes in 10 years, in a decade, right? And within 2 months of training yoke, I was already back up to almost PB weights.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So really, once you've built a base, yes, your muscle size will decrease, your strength will decrease, but you'll get it back faster. If you've built a certain base and you reduce your training load, like Gav comes in maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. He does a little bit of stuff at home.
He's been in like 3 times a week.
Oh, that's great.
I think it's just you, to be honest.
Man, get out. Stop it. Let's just say on average, he's been training once or twice a week.
Yeah.
He was training 4 times a week. So he's going to maintain a good level of strength. Now, top end strength is a little different because 1 rep max, even though it's sort of counterintuitive, is a skill. So having that muscular control, muscular coordination, that central nervous system, your brain talking to your muscles is a skill related thing. So if you stop doing that skill, you reduce your capacity for it.
Yeah.
So your top end strength might come down a little bit, but you can still maintain a good base of strength and a good, muscular size off a reduced workload.
I think a good way to put it would be that it doesn't reduce your potential, but it reduces your current capacity. So you could still work back up to getting previous numbers or PBs, but like at current, if you took 6 months off training, if we threw in a testing session right at the beginning of that block after 6 months and saw what you could get for your 1 rep max versus your 10 reps, your 1 rep max is going to be rubbish in comparison, and it just takes time to build you back up. But once you start training again, like everything jumps and jumps and jumps. Your volume wouldn't really be that affected. But just say that your top end capacity is affected. The potential to get back to it is still easally there.
Yeah, and this just came to me just now. So just riffing on this is it would probably also depend on your muscle fiber allocations as well. So we all have a certain amount of fast twitch that we can't change, a certain amount of slow twitch that we can't change, and you get a certain amount of sort of trainable muscle fibers that you can change depending on how you train. If you are someone that has predominantly slow twitch, like you're not a powerful, explosive person, you are just built for endurance, that person probably wouldn't lose as much strength as a fast twitch athlete because those fast twitch they need the stimulus to be explosive and to train. Whereas if you have just primarily slow twitch, and you took 6 months off, you probably still grind out like a 10 RM pretty similar, on your like volume, sort of strength volume,
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. So there you go, Gav. I've got a bit of information there for you.
Good question.
All right. Why don't you hit up Gordon's question here, Adrian?
Okay. How long until...
No.
Is there a path to fitness without pain? That is a very good question. The answer is no. The answer is yes. The answer is
both.
The answer is both. The answer is it depends. It depends on what you want out of your training. I was actually watching a show on Netflix last night. Idris Elba was commentating. What's it called when you do that?
Narrating.
And it was all just about these insane athletic endeavors where people are doing these like races through like some of the toughest terrain in the world, through deserts and all sorts of crazy stuff. Some like really dangerous, like long distance bike rides, all sorts of insane sports. And the whole theme of the episode that I watched was people trying to conquer pain and just do insane, ridiculous things so far away from what you even see at the Olympics. It's like the point is to endure pain. And all of these different athletes were talking about why they do it. And they were doing these...
Sounds terrible.
Unbelievable, ridiculous feats of athleticism, pushing their bodies so much harder than they had to. And these things are relatively unknown. I've never even heard of them before. But the theme was about personal development. Some people just want to see what they can do. Some people want to see like how close to death they can get without dying. Some people want to push themselves to their absolute limits. And so they endure, they endure a great deal amount of pain to get there. And that would be the most ridiculous extreme that you could get to, right? These people are doing just silly stuff. But on the other end of the scale, some people just want to kind of stay a bit fit and be healthy and not really push themselves that hard. And you can get pretty fit taking it really easy as well. Like it doesn't have to be an extreme.
Yeah, I dare say Gordon doesn't want to like push himself to the brink of death to see how things are going. Like as most people don't want to. So let me get you back here, Gordon. Okay, so I think yes, there absolutely is a path to fitness without pain.
Yeah.
Right. Let's just start with all right. We already talked about it this podcast. A great indicator of how someone is going to have a good quality of life and live for longer is just by being more metabolically healthy. One of the easiest ways to do that is to not be obese, is to lose adipose tissue, to lose fat. So if we want to do that, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do it extreme, and you can smash yourself with hardcore intervals on an air bike and circuit training. And man, I tell you what, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be a little painful. Yep. You'll probably lose the weight a little faster if you did that. But in saying that, Gordon, if you were to go for, or if someone was to go for a walk 5 days a week for half an hour each day and spend an extra 10 minutes warming up on a bike nice and light, an extra 10 minutes cooling down on a bike, all of that adds up, right? So it's all stuff that's going to help contribute to losing body fat and therefore increasing your fitness level. And it's not painful. You just got to find things that are enjoyable, that are active. So that's one thing.
The World Health Organization actually classifies the amount of recommended exercise, cardiovascular exercise per week, and it's 5 times a week at low to moderate exercise, 5 times a week for 30 minutes. And then there's medium exercise. I think it's 3 to 4 times a week for 45 minutes. And then vigorous exercise 2 to 3 times a week, I think for a total of about 60 minutes or something like that. No, it's twice a week for something like, as a total of 60 minutes in the week. And so if you look at the World Health Organization's recommendations, the lower end of that is very low. So 30 minutes a day over 5 days of the week, low to medium exercise. That's just a brisk walk for most people. You can go for a brisk walk and not feel any pain. So it's very, very manageable to be able to do, like, hit the base standards of what's considered to be healthy for the average person.
Right. Yeah. Also, if we were to relate it to your training in here, Gordon, I know Adrian's got you doing a lot of mobility work.
Pain in here.
And look, it is uncomfortable, it is sore. But if you've had quite a while of inactivity and you don't have that movement and mobility, it's uncomfortable to get it back.
Yep.
But you're improving. Like if you looked at you now to when you first started, like your movement is so much better.
Huge.
Right? So, and again, I guess like mobility stuff is one of those things where if you don't push yourself a little bit into where it's uncomfortable, you're not going to get those positive changes. Or maybe you will, but it might take a lot longer. Yeah. So it's like everything. There's a payoff.
Exactly.
Yes, if you experience a little bit more pain here, but it's going to like get you there a little bit faster, right? Or maybe you just do it
faster. Yeah. If you push yourself a little bit harder, you'll just get more out of it. So Correct. It really depends on what you want to get out of it. Whether you want to just idle by, be a little bit healthy and just kind of look after yourself a bit, but you're not really too fast, or you want to do a marathon through a desert. The payoff is really what you put in is what you're going to get out of it. Yeah. So it depends on what you're willing to tolerate.
But yeah, I think the answer is there definitely can be a path to fitness without pain. Yeah. It really depends on what your goals are in the end.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's a good question.
Sophie had a really interesting question, and hers is how do I improve anxiety before big lifts? Like she has a problem with psyching herself out sometimes before she gets into really heavy lifting.
Yeah, this was a really interesting one, and I actually read through quite a bit of studies. It led me from one thing to the next thing to the next thing until I found kind of the crux of the information that's used for that.
Great word.
Crux. And I got some good words
I'm gonna add that.
as well.
Robust, crux.
I'll get to the word robust. You give me a minute.
And penultimate. Fantastic.
So basically, with that one, what I found was that the main models that are used to measure anxiety, which I needed to find a baseline first. So what is anxiety in terms of sports psychology? One of the main measuring systems used is called the SAS. It is a sports anxiety scale.
Okay.
And there's 2 of them. The original was in 1997, which is called the Sport Competition Anxiety Test, which is a 15-question questionnaire. And the SAS-2 is a sport anxiety scale, which was revised in 2006. And it is, according to a few meta-analyses,
Analysi? That sounds better. Let's go with analysis.
According to a few other studies, that was irrefutably more accurate, basically, the newer revised one. So it measures or assesses competitive trait anxiety experienced by athletes both before and during competition. And that would be your baseline first to test your level of anxiety and like the feelings you have about sport in general. Regardless of your sport, whether it's a team sport, an individual sport, this is used across genders, across countries, it's like one theoretical model used worldwide. Now, there was a huge meta-analysis done in 2021 by the Singapore Sports Science and Medicine Center. They found...
Can I just pause this for a second and say, Adrian, I like this.
What?
You just get on there, finding good quality information for these answers.
It's really interesting.
It's beautiful.
It's great. Yeah.
Yes. 2021, relevant, meta-analysis. It's fantastic.
I know.
Look, continue.
Yeah, the last time we did this, you were like, I want you to do a question and answer podcast. I made PowerPoint presentations and you got a little carried away.
You're stepping up here. I love this.
I got this. So this study found, it's a meta-analysis, and they looked at over 300 studies. They found that regardless of the experiment, design, anxiety measure, anxiety type, gender, country, sport, or intervention type or method, that basically every type of intervention, psychological intervention to do with sport, so whether they had a coach intervening or a sports psychologist or at any level, any type any type of intervention at all, there was a robust improvement. The word that they use was great. Robust improvement in anxiety levels, which means that anxiety decreased quite a bit. So ways that you can deal with it is, I would say,
literally anything. Like just reach out for literally any help from anyone.
So we should put the link up to this sports anxiety scale, because it's just a self-filled questionnaire, and you can do it and redo it and redo it over time. There's a lot of information it's very well documented in different ways to deal with anxiety and stress in sport.
Mindfulness, bit of meditation, breathing methods, everything, right?
Yeah, so there's all sorts of different things. It's I didn't really come up with anything specific because there's so many different things coming out all the time.
You know, I think
there's quite a lot.
Let's give her some homework. All right, I want you to look up breathing techniques to reduce stress and anxiety. And I'll mention this because, Dad, if you listen to the last Strength Institute podcast I had Dad on before we left for the Worlds, and he was talking about breathing. I asked him, do you get nervous? And he goes, no, I really focus on my breathing. And from years of experience in working in different businesses and some training that they had gotten was, you can try to tell yourself that you're not anxious and that you're fine, but if you're breathing shallowly or rapid, or you're not taking those deep breaths, you're nervous and your body's not lying.
Well, it's not, and the markers for this is they can there's fine physiological tests that they can do. It's accurate physiological tests where they test your somatic nervous system versus like they do blood pressure, EEGs, EKGs, all sorts of stuff. So a lot of research has been put into this aspect of sport, as you can imagine why, with high-level athletes. 100%. There's a very, very. It's not just mental. The mental aspects affect the physical aspects, and you look at Wim Hof being able to like do the stuff that he does. You look at in the military, they do variations of box breathing, and breathing techniques. Meditation has been used for a very long time.
Long time.
Very effective to control people's nervous systems to an extent. They found, actually, this was an interesting part as well. I just love this. Robust evidence base for the use of psychological interventions to help reduce competitive anxiety. They found that higher level athletes get a lot more out of it than lower level athletes as well. So as the competition steps up and the athlete becomes more, I guess, capable, or they're competing at a higher level, the interventions tend to be more effective.
I dare say they're probably more, at the highest level, they're probably more diligent in doing the activities and the exercises, and they have a better understanding of their own psyche and physical ability anyway.
Exactly.
Whereas someone starting off might not really understand what it's all about.
As much. And the last point that this meta-analysis went over, there was a separate analysis that suggested that a medium to large size effects for cognitive anxiety and self-confidence, and this was separate to sport in general. So they had a separate questionnaire that's just like personal sort of stuff. And so self-confidence, self-esteem, and cognitive anxiety, so just general anxiety, any sort of intervention at all, even not related to daily life, just sport, helps overall as well. So there are many different types of interventions, but just engaging in literally any type of intervention can help. So one example is breathing. They're just like general counseling. You can go speak to a sports psychologist. You can speak to a coach. We can go and research and look at a bunch of different methods that you can use as well, and basically just start doing stuff, and it will help. So we'll put the links up for the SAS, the questionnaire, and start there would be a good idea.
Nice. Good, man. Great research. I like that.
Yeah, right.
Actually, you didn't do the research, but great finding and disseminating that research. It's great.
It was very robust.
Yes.
By the way,
it's a rotund effort.
Those were the exact words that they used. Medium to small improvements, but they had all the p-values and other stuff up there. But robust evidence. It's I've never seen that in a scientific paper before.
Ash T asks, what are the 3 best martial arts in our opinion? Because she does karate, and I always tease her about doing karate. So you're doing a fake, and I hope you enjoy doing your fake martial arts there. It's not fake martial arts, it kind of is. It's just not,
it's not fake martial art.
How many fake wooden blocks do you need to break in real life? I don't know.
It's not a fake martial art. It's just not
as effective?
Look, it's not a good one anymore. Before all of the good martial arts were made. It's very old, right? I actually don't know too much of the history of karate. But
I don't know either. Look,
it's very old.
Ash.
But it's since been kind of shown to be not very effective.
I just
versus other martial arts.
Everyone loves Bruce Lee, the Kung Fu man, but there's a reason why no one does Kung Fu in the UFC, right? Yeah. And yes, there have been 1 or 2 good karate guys in the UFC. few and far between, and they're great athletes. And it's not because they did karate. They're still mixed. They're still mixed martial artists.
Only do karate.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
And people are like, you're moving weird. But like, what? Because it's like karate. Anyway, anyhow, don't get me wrong. Karate Kid, love it. All right, one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Yeah,
like Cobra Kai, love the TV series.
Yeah.
Love me a bit of karate. All right, but in terms of what our opinion of the best 3 martial arts are, I've got my opinions. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay, best 3.
Wait,
real life
you go,
application.
I go. You go. I go.
Well, no, because then it's not my best 3. It's like a hybrid. It's a weird.
Okay, fine. You go.
Demented fish frog.
Fine.
So my opinion, top 3, wrestling, number 1. Well, they're not in order.
But just the top 3.
The top 3.
Okay.
Wrestling.
Yep.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep.
Muay Thai. They're the 3.
I was gonna say
if you only had right
thing.
You were I was gonna pick the same 3. No, look,
I was
yeah.
BJJ is, I think, number 1. BJJ is probably the most valuable and most effective form of martial art because literally anyone can practice it.
Mm-hmm.
Literally anyone, like most people with bad knees, bad backs, like most people can do BJJ. And if we're talking about effective martial arts, like someone approaches you on the street and pushes you to the ground, usually like fist fights end in a couple of seconds. They just grab onto each other and get all crazy. No one starts doing backward spinning heel kicks and back handsprings and yelling like Bruce Lee in the streets.
Yeah.
Usually it ends in a headlock or...
Most fights end up on the ground, I would say.
100%.
Yeah, and so I think this was sort of shown really early in the UFC days of when people from different disciplines came in, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dominated everyone because they didn't know what was happening. They'd wake up they were choked out or they're about to break their arm or leg, right?
Yeah.
So Jiu-Jitsu is so incredibly important. And it's been really interesting to see the evolution of mixed martial arts because what happened was you started to get some really good wrestlers that then the jiu-jitsu guys couldn't get them onto the ground, or what would happen is the wrestler would take them down, be in a top position, but be so strong and have such a good base from wrestling, they weren't getting submitted. They would just ground and pound them out.
Also, even other striking martial arts, the wrestlers would just get their mitts on, pick you up, and slam you on the floor. Like they cover distance really quickly.
Unless you could get a knockout quickly, you were done.
And the wrestlers are usually pretty big and stocky, and they can tank a couple hits to get in close. And once they get their hands on you, it's kind of.
And so that's the first 2. I think it's so important to be able to take people down, stop from getting taken down, understand your body weight while you're grappling, and then to be able to submit people standing or on the floor. Well, that's so those 2 cover all of that.
The good thing about wrestling is that it starts standing, right? You can do a lot of wrestling standing, whereas BJJ is all groundwork, and the 2 of those mixed together are incredibly
most of the time in a jiu-jitsu competition, people will just sit on their butt and then just like start grappling, which is not really real life application.
No.
So then that leads me up, I need some sort of striking in there. So what's striking? Like boxing is, if you were to put up a boxer and a Muay Thai fighter and say you're only allowed to punch, I'm sure the boxer would probably win. But the fact that that Muay Thai is elbows, knees, kicks, punches, learn how to clinch and control while standing. I feel like it's just the more impressive, it's the more effective
in terms of
standing martial art.
An effective striking style. It arguably probably is one of the best because it incorporates that little bit of wrestling. There's like sweeps and things like that, but it's not trying to do any weird, funny like arm bars and difficult moves, and it's just very effective. Like it's all about just trying to like hurt someone.
Right, yeah. It's
hurt someone's shins. If they're, damn it. I should have prepared this. Joe Rogan talked about this in one of his podcasts, and it was the first time I saw it. And then I watched the video that he brought up, and he talked about early on in the UFC, there was no leg kicks. They just boxed. And so the first guy to come in with leg kicks I think it was like a big Maori guy.
I mean, they were allowed to leg kick,
but people just didn't. And he started chopping people in half, and people just had no defense against it. So he would just walk around the ring.
They didn't know how to check kicks at the time.
Yeah, just kicking people's legs, and they would eventually like not be able to stand up anymore, and the refs called them on a TKO. And so all of that were just low thigh kicks. And it was savage to watch people's legs were all ballooned up, like very clear, like leg muscle damage and stuff like that. Since that happened, the predominant type of martial art for striking, leg kicks and checks and stuff has been Muay Thai. It's been the most effective. Because you don't see people, too many of them, doing like backward spinning heel kicks and stuff like that. People try and be showy with it, but you very rarely see knockouts with like a capoeira kick or anything like that.
You see a couple taekwondo kicks every now and again.
But for the most part, most people are very proficient in the basics of kickboxing or
they'll use that kickboxing to set up knockouts or to set up takedowns or something like that. But I think really find yourself a good MMA gym because that will then incorporate all of these martial arts, right? Yeah. But if I had to limit it to just 3, I think we agree there. We think that they're the most effective 3: wrestling, jiu-jitsu, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Muay Thai.
In terms of like literally effective fighting styles, 100%.
Yeah.
But then
and this is for unarmed contact. Like I guess if you want to be like good at like with weapons, I'm sure there'd be some kung fu stuff,
sure,
ninjutsu, right?
But I would say if you're looking at it from a different angle, like a lot of people look at martial arts for different reasons. Like
hang on, talk about different angles. Which angle are we?
I'm not sure. They're talking about it from a different angle. The discipline side. Things like karate and lots of different martial arts that have been around for a very, very, very long time that focus a lot on like mental discipline, whereas mixed martial arts doesn't as much. It's not the main focus.
Excuse me?
Where the whole reason why people do things like hold on, the whole reason why people do things like karate and breaking boards and stuff, it's like to practice the mental discipline. It's not so much about practicing the mental discipline to be good at fighting. It's like a separate thing. Whereas in MMA, like if you're not disciplined enough, you get choked out. Right, like it's part of it. You have to do it, but it's almost like the whole part of these other martial arts where it revolves more around that. The ideology is different, so I feel like that's why I think a lot of other people value different martial arts for different reasons.
There's value, or there's all sorts of value in all sorts of martial arts. I feel like, geez, when I did Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there's a hell of a lot of discipline involved.
Well, I'm not saying there's not.
Yeah,
I'm just saying it's not the main focus.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. All right.
Mr. Miyagi, look, all the lessons that he taught you as a kid,
yeah,
that's what it was all about.
That's right.
He was waxing on and waxing off. He didn't realize that that's what was making him good at martial art,
Well, that was because Daniel-san was doing the wax on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He was teaching him about discipline.
Yeah, discipline.
And then all of a sudden, he could block punches.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so I hope that answers your question there, Ash. Moving on to Karen. Does appearance improve performance?
This is another interesting one, actually.
What are we talking about here? As in, like, if you wear red, will you run faster that day?
The answer is yes.
Because red is the fastest color?
Red is the fastest color.
Karen, yes. Red is the fastest color, and if you dress in red, it will improve your performance.
We I think, talked about this a little bit before as well, whether she was talking about like physical appearance as in like clothing and that sort of thing, like how you present yourself versus how you literally aesthetically look, which are two kind of different things. And I think both, yes.
I think a little bit both, yes.
Look,
if you... especially if you work good, if you're a confidence player, you want to look good and feel good about yourself. Yeah. You get into the gym, you're like, I look good, so I'm ready to lift some weights.
Yeah.
That absolutely will have a positive effect on performance.
Look good, feel good. Yeah.
Look good, 100%. Feel good. Feel good, be good.
Exactly. I think that's a good one. Like everyone wants to feel good in their own skin and just putting an outfit on that makes you feel good about yourself. If it makes you feel less insecure and more confident that you can go out and have a good session, then that is improving your performance.
100%.
Versus being a little shy, a little insecure, maybe not doing an exercise because you don't like the way that it makes your body look while you're holding a thing in a place or something. Like that, if you can do your whole session and feel great about it and feel happy about it, yes.
Yeah.
And then aesthetically, I mean, well, yeah. It's that
I guess like, appearances in like, you appear to have long arms. Like, yes, I'll be good at deadlifting. Like, I guess like, is that what you mean?
More appearance like dad bod versus a six pack, I guess, like the aesthetic. Which actually, that's a tricky one because if you look at a lot of powerlifters, very unassuming. Not a lot of powerlifters. They don't look lean, shredded, jacked. I've seen a lot of powerlifters at like
usually in the heavier weight classes,
even the state level comps.
Yeah,
a lot of guys don't even look like they're trained, and they're very strong.
Right,
they've got that typical dad bod. They got like a little bit of body fat on them, and they're obviously not doing bodybuilding, but they're really strong.
I think
guys.
Maybe we could say that that's sport dependent. So depending on the sport you're playing or partaking in, might have different physical demands. And so, yes, how you look, like maybe some things require you to carry a little bit more body fat and some things don't. And so depending on what you do, that physical appearance might actually affect your performance differently.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
Also, we know that having a beard puts 10% on your squat.
It does.
So that's a thing.
It does. Science.
Science. And we're going to finish off with Deb, who has a few questions today. Ooh. And because Deb, we missed you, Deb, come back. She moved down south, right? But she watches all of these and she partakes. She sends me emails, she sends questions, she answers, she likes, she comments. Everyone needs to be more like Deb, all right?
I like that Deb is still part of the mix.
Yes, Deb is still very much a part of our community here.
Yes,
and so we're going to definitely answer your questions, Deb. Is first one, why do they use a thicker barbell for strongman? Okay, that barbell is called an axle, all right? And it's just basically saying, this big fat bar is like an axle of a truck or something.
Yep.
And the reason why they use that in strongman is because strongman is all about being a spectacle. It's all about the performance. It's all about trying to be entertaining. And so why use a barbell when you can use a truck axle with tires on it? It looks so much cooler.
Yeah, why not just do a normal deadlift and use
literally
4 tires?
Yeah, and that's why you can't actually grab it. You got to use straps to hold yourself to it because it's so thick. But that is literally the reason why they use axles in strongman and not in powerlifting is because it's all about the spectacle and how it looks and being cool.
Yeah.
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 There's no physical or performance reason why you would ever use a fat bar over a thin bar. You actually can't grab a fat bar when they're that thick and have heavy weight on them.
Looks cool.
It looks cool. That is literally and I hope you weren't hoping for some really technical reason.
Breakdown
it's because it
just looks cool.
Strongman is all about being different and impressive. And
I think Dan has talked about this in one of the podcasts.
Yes,
the podcast that we had with him. He talked about it having its roots in performance as well, entertainment.
Yeah.
And so it just has to look cool to keep people's attention, and that's why they do a lot of the events that they do as well. Very specifically, that's why they do aeroplane pulls, truck pulls, like car yokes, all that sort of stuff. They could probably be stronger doing stricter kind of lifts and make it better for the athlete, but it just doesn't look as cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's got to be. It's all about get those cool points.
Pull a plane with his teeth one time on TV. That was insane.
I've seen it with his teeth. I've seen the harnesses.
But. He had a thing, and he was just biting it. It's the coolest shit I ever saw.
Yeah, right. She also asked, next question, can you explain a bit more about programming? So periodization, volume, deloading, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's kind of a big question.
It's a big question.
That's kind of a big one.
So I guess, all right, with
basics now.
Yeah, with programming,
yeah.
I guess in terms of, there's a few things you need to think about. One is, I think a big one, exercise selection.
Yep.
Right? So we are going to try to pick, when we're doing programming for someone, what is their goal? Is their goal to be a really good power lifter? Because it is. If it is, we have to have squatting, benching, deadlifting in their program. Mm-hmm. 0 point doing some weird, obscure thing that has zero crossover, right? So exercise selection is something that we do dependent on what the person's goals are. And parts of the principles of strength training, one of the main principles is specificity. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get good at bench pressing, you have to do bench pressing, okay? In terms of periodization, because you've said periodization, volume, deload. Well, volume and deloading are part of your periodization.
Yep.
So if you were to basically do the same exercise and the same volume, like 3 sets of 5, twice a week, every week for 3 years, you're gonna stop improving because you're not getting the stimulus. So we use periodization as a way to change the intensity of your sessions. We do that by altering the volume. So we might make you do more volume or less volume, but at a heavier weight. So we're increasing the intensity or the feel of that. And after a certain amount of weeks of doing that, if we're going to be working on getting, up 5%, up 5%, up 5%, we're dropping the reps down and down and down. Well, at the end, if we kept doing that, you'd just be maxing out on 1 rep every single time. And again, we're not getting the stimulus then.
Yep.
So, and will also lead to overtraining and detraining. So where you're not only stop improving, but you'll start to go backwards a little bit because you're run down.
A different stimulus to adapt from as you move through different phases of your program. Otherwise, you'll hit a wall and you'll never recover from it. And that's what a lot of people say, they plateau because they don't do periodization. They just try and keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing to no end. I guess you could talk about the smaller cycles. It's like mesocycles, microcycles. So if you're looking at, let's say, like a year program and someone's going for a competition at the end of the year, you can break that up, right? Where you've got, you have 2 months, say it will be a volume. So 2 months will be of a different type of maybe a mix between volume and strength, and then you go 2 months working up to a peaking block and then a peaking block. So it's all broken up into different sections based on what type of program that you're doing.
Yeah.
So and that's so much variation in that based on the sport, if it's a team sport, an individual sport. But it's all based off of that same principle of periodization.
Yeah. And you just basically have to break everything into smaller blocks.
Yeah.
So like I said, if you're talking about, let's say a sporting season, a rugby season.
Yeah.
Right? So you have your competition season and you have your off season, right? And so your off season, you might break into two parts: off-season and pre-season, right? Because off-season is really where you're just not really doing anything. Pre-season is when you're getting yourself to the point where we are ready to start a full rugby season. And then you have your competition season, which is the whole season itself. And you might call that competition, and then you might have the last 2 weeks, which is the finals that you want to be peaking for, you know? So you're trying to plan these things out. In terms of, I guess, looking at a smaller level, how do we pick the sets and the reps and the weights for things? A good training tool that I use is Prilepin's table, which comes from Russian strength coach back in the day who was like a wizard with strength training. And it basically gives percentages. So like if you're working at 90% or above of what your max thing is, your max lift in an exercise. So let's say you're doing squats, you're doing we want to be doing like a high intensity, like 95% effort.
Yep.
Well, much volume should you do? It has a guide. It says, really, if you're doing 90% or more, you should probably only be doing 4 working reps in that session.
Yeah, okay.
All right? You can do as many as 6 to 8.
So it gives you like an effective guide.
It gives you like an effective guide, cool, basically. So that's why a lot of times we'll do like 4 sets of 1 or 2 sets of 2, because it's still hanging around that 4 rep range up at that high intensity. Any more, you're going to probably burn out and not get quite as effective workout. Any less, you're not getting enough stimulus needed for doing that little volume, right? So, Prilepin's tables is a nice guide. There's plenty of research out there that talks about trained and untrained athletes and how much volume they need. So again, it's actually a huge question, Deb, but there's some of the things that we try to think about. Exercise selection, the intensities that we do. What part of the season is the athlete in?
What type of sport, whether they have a pre-season and an off-season, or whether they just train year-round. Like a rugby season is very different from a powerlifter going for a comp year to year. Like, it depends on how many comps that they want to do. It depends on a lot of stuff. The type of strength sport that they do, how many comps that they might have in a year might affect how many times you can peak, how you prep for a competition. There's so many different variations in there.
And that sort of leads into her final question, which was, does this apply to older populations, or should they be prioritizing other things such as mobility, cardio, things like that? And I would say, all of the core principles apply to all demographics.
Yep.
What you need to take into consideration, and the main one as people get older, is recovery, right? So, and total, recoverable volume. So, for example, someone that's in their mid-30s can recover usually a lot faster than someone that's in their 60s or 70s, right? And I talked about this with Dad on the Strength Institute podcast, last podcast, in training for his world championships in powerlifting. He could not handle the amount of volume that someone in their 30s that would be training 4 to 6 times a week probably for that. Dad could only train twice a week, because any more than that, he would start to get run down. We only trained 3 times a week in the last 4 weeks before the comp. And even then, on the second last week, he was really struggling to recover, and we had to decrease the amount of stuff that we're doing per session. So the main thing that I would tell you to consider, Deb, is with training, is to make sure you're recovering. If you're recovering well, all the principles apply. Okay.
And then it circles back to that very first thing we talked about: specificity.
Yeah.
There are good guidelines, but it changes person to person. So if you need more recovery, have more. If you need less, have less. It really just depends on what you're able to tolerate.
Absolutely. And also she asked, should we be, prioritizing other things like mobility and cardio? And again, that comes down to the person. So I think that it's really important. And you're not at this age at all, Deb, but as people get like older, it's really important that we don't want them to fall, because when people that are in their 80s and stuff have a fall and break a hip, that's when things can go down really, really fast. So as people approach those older age groups, one, just lifting weights is going to help with proprioception, bone density, all those fantastic things. But you can absolutely work at doing a little bit more mobility work to make sure that you're able to get those joints through a good range of motion. You want to have a good base level of conditioning. You say cardio, but like just conditioning. So again, we're not expecting someone that's 85 to go out there and do Tabata sprint sets on an air bike. But if they're still able to walk for 15 or 20 minutes every day, that's fantastic, right? They're keeping a certain level of fitness up.
Well, like we talked about as one of the first questions, just your general cardiovascular health improves your quality of life and your lifespan by quite a bit. So the fact that you would be doing weight training is fantastic, but just generally increasing, like you don't have to do cardio, but generally increasing your overall activity will just increase your general quality of life as well. Live longer, live stronger.
That's it.
Yeah.
Live long, be strong.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I think to answer all of your questions, it depends on a lot of stuff. It depends. It just depends on the specificity. It depends of your goal. It depends on what you're going for, what type of sport, how serious you are, whether you're a weekend warrior or you're taking your athletic endeavors very seriously. It really just depends. You can get hyper specific with so much stuff, but you need to know what the stuff is first.
Yep.
So, specificity. Yeah.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, follow, share, do all that cool stuff, comment, help the channel grow, helps us. And
if you have any more questions,
yeah,
comment down below.
Put them in the comments.
If they're good questions, we'll answer them in the next Questions and Answers podcast.
Yeah.
We'll put some of the links in this one. And if you guys want to know anything else cool about us or sport, health, fitness, anything at all, let us know what your questions are. We'd love to answer them. We
Absolutely.
like these podcasts.
Yeah, they're good fun. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time on The Big Flex.
See you later.